Welcome to the Ways and Means meeting of April 22nd. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag
The United States of America, to the republic
which is
and one nation.
indivisible, with liberty and
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Since we're having a remote meeting, and pursuant to the Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law 30A, Section 20, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Burlington Ways and Means is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public is permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so by tuning into the BCAT Government Cable Access Channel, the BCAT Government Meetings Facebook Live feed, or over the phone 408-418-9388, meeting number 713-851-433. All this information is also on the Burlington calendar with the agenda. We'll try to take a look at the Facebook Live feed. If there are any questions that come up, we may be able to answer them during the meeting. As a reminder to the committee, all votes are required to be done by roll call for virtual meetings. And so we'll be doing that tonight. Last week, I'll put this off to later. So one of the first item on the agenda, several members asked for a update of our Burlington's financial condition. I sent around a memo from John Danzo, and both Paul and John are here to answer questions. So Paul, do you want to give us the overview?
Mr. Chairman, I'll have John start, maybe run through the memo again, and then we can add in whatever's missing when we get to the end.
Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. So a couple of weeks ago, Paul was able to share with you our plans for getting through the current year's budget, the FY21 budget process, and beyond that. I know Roger had just mentioned the memo that he shared with you from the finance team, so I won't read it, but I just wanted to point out a couple of pieces of it. In the memo, you'll see some of the immediate and short-term safeguards that we've put into place, and whether or not there are any long-term measures that need to be put into place remains unclear. But what is clear is that we need more time, and it's too early to tell about those any long-term changes. We feel that we'll get through FY20, this current year's budget. We don't foresee any problems with that. And we're hoping to move forward with the FY21 budget with some contingencies in place, as you'll see in the memo. So just a quick about those contingencies. What we're hoping to do is the guidelines were set in December. We're hoping to move forward with those guidelines. The budgets that you've approved, we're pretty far down the pipe here. And like I said, we don't yet know. We need more data on what's going to happen with the economy and how that's going to affect our revenues. So we'd like to see that budget move forward, but with some contingencies. As I mentioned, some of those contingencies would be for us to have some expenditures that were approved, but we'd actually hold off on them and not make those purchases or expenditures until the fall, where we have a better idea. We're now at that point, we'll have a couple of years into the next fiscal year. We'll know, hopefully by then, how the economy is doing, whether we're back up in business, whether there's people back in restaurants, whether hotels are open again. So what the plan for the administration would be was to come back in the fall and give an update on where we think we are and what our recommendation would be about those expenditures, whether we would move forward some, hold off longer on some, or just completely abandon some. And that would give us some time to do that before we would set the tax rate next December. We've also adjusted our free cash requests for uses of free cash for FY21. Normally we have some some one-time capital items that we request from free cash, along with other things like paying down debt, keeping stuff off the debt schedule, or making a payment to OPEB or stabilization. We're recommending that we don't do either of the OPEB or pay down any debt and move forward with the capital expenditures. We think they're needed. They've been on the list for a long time. The town's still got to operate even after COVID. And we think that, our goal is to move into FY21 with carrying over about $9 million, just under $9 million in free cash, which is much higher than we have been in the past years. So we've done something with that. And really what we're looking at now is having the departments take a deeper look at their budgets and prepare some options if we do have to make changes in the fall, what those will be. But we really think that the tough decisions will come in preparing the FY22 budget. At that point, we'll be 8 to 9 or 10 months into COVID. We'll really have a better idea then of how that's going to affect our revenues, and it will give us time to plan and not have to make decisions right now on cutting programs or services. So I didn't want to read the memo, so that's just a quick overview. I know Paul probably has something to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing I would add for the committee's benefit is, through your cooperation and the cooperation of town meeting over the years, we've been extremely conservative. We are conservative for just this type of event to give us a little bit of a cushion for us to at least hold off making quick, misinformed decisions. And I'd like obviously this is subject to your approval and ultimately town meetings, but, we're hopeful that, our solid financial position now will at least allow us to get to September and just have a better chance to evaluate sort of what the true impacts of this thing are. We don't think that they're going to be good, clearly, but, we're trying to prevent making disruptive cuts under duress. And all we're asking for is a little bit more time to evaluate the situation. This situation could be far worse than we would imagine, and we could be looking at drastic cuts in the future. But I think what Superintendent Conti, and I think he would probably back me up on this, is it's very disruptive if we do things under duress. And I think if we're going to have to make cuts in the future, we want to make sure that they're thoughtful and they're the least harmful to services and to residents and to students. And I'm not sure if Eric has anything he wants to add to that. We just feel as though we're really far along in the process. And again, I think what we're asking for is give us a couple more months. We can adjust the budget down in September if we have to raise the tax rate. We can do things in September. And we're just asking for some more time to evaluate.
Thanks. Eric, do you want to add anything?
No, Roger, I would just say, Paul, again, I've been in regular communication with Paul and the financial team, and we're working together and supportive of this direction. So I just think we want to be thoughtful and see where this whole situation goes. I keep saying it's our first pandemic, so we're sort of learning and working together as we go. But I'm in agreement with how Paul framed the situation.
All right, thanks. Questions from the committee?
Roger, this is Frank. Can you hear me?
Hi, Frank, go ahead.
Okay. I want to frame a couple of things with John and Paul. So we have two broad areas. Well, first of all, for the current fiscal year, basically we've got maybe 4 months to go, and the impacts may be somewhat predictable, but who knows? So we'll just play the rest of this year out. And when we go to close the books, I guess your intent would be to deal with whatever is sitting there at the time. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes, we've been monitoring expenses very closely. We've asked departments to identify areas within their budgets that won't be spent, so that we can use those funds that are already pre-existing to offset any additional costs we've had from responding to the pandemic, whether it be at the fire department, the board of health, different areas where we're feeling stressed from this police department. So we do anticipate that we will be able to balance out expenses. We're keeping track of our expenses related to COVID also for any future state or federal reimbursements.
Right.
We're fairly confident that we can use our existing budgets to balance everything out. Now, on the local receipt side, we're confident that we're going to meet our budget estimate for this fiscal year, which is a great thing. But just so everybody knows, we usually far exceed that. So that's where our conservative budgeting comes in. So when we just sort of hit our number as opposed to exceeding our number substantially, that's going to have a direct impact on our free cash next year. Again, so we made the adjustments to carry over more free cash than ever been carried forward in history. I think there were actually years when we had $1.8 million total of free cash at the end of the year. So, I mean, the amount of $9 million that's being carried, or close to $9 million being carried forward is, I would say a historical amount. And again, that will help us buffer the next year.
Okay, so what I want to go to the second part of it is so for the fiscal year that we're working on, 21, we have two broad areas we can play with: operating budgets and capital warrant articles. It seems to me that are you asking us? All right, so let's just get some data on the table. The school side, I think, is 1.6 in warrants, and the town side, is it the same? The total 1.6 million.
So the total for Frank, this is John Denizio. The total for all of the warrant articles come from free cash, both capital and non-capital, both school, town, and citizen request is just under 4 million. It's 3.93 million.
Okay, all right. So that's what's on paper that we're all voting on. And if we were just to vote this thing as it's currently requested, written down, that would leave us with about 9 million in free cash for carryover, because we're already saying we're not going to draw on that anymore for, adders to OPEB, stabilization, other stuff. We're just going to follow the plan, right? All right, so that'll give us 9 million there, and we got 8 something in stabilization. So we'll go into this budget year, we'll be voting against a cushion of 17 million, and it's dependent on certain assumptions that built into that in order for us to have a balanced budget, which include things like the cherry sheet, I don't know, excise tax, you name it. So what you're saying is in the next fiscal year, the one we're going to be voting on here, the shortfall is unpredictable. And when we get to September, we can evaluate where on both operating and capital what we might elect to do. Is that what you're basically proposing?
Yes, that is correct, Frank. I guess with the caveat that there'll have to be a lot of thought put into the capital warrant articles and their start date, and to identify those of which that we can hold off on until September, so that they're technically not started spending those funds yet on the warrant article.
Yeah. So we all need to vote on these things. We're going to start tonight. Is the mindset here? This is really difficult because the warrant articles are already prioritized. There's nobody that's got anything in your half or in the school half that they don't think is pretty doggone important, because it's less than they would have liked for already. Are you asking us to reprioritize those now, or just take them on their merit, assuming that we have that amount of money to work with?
We're asking you to take them as proposed. And again, I think there will be some work required by John and I and Nicole and Eric, just to make sure that, I think we use the OPEB payment as a good example. that's something that if we get the appropriation in the operating budget, we don't make the transfer, September comes, things look lousy, and we just reduce that down to zero if we have to, right?
Right, okay,
And with the warrant articles, similar tactic. We're gonna have to pay close attention. If you give us approval and town meeting gives us approval in June for these warrant articles, we're gonna have to make sure that we don't rush into anything, and we're gonna sort of take our time and not commit to these things, understanding that we may need to go back in September and say, you know what? The way things are that bad that we can't do this right now.
okay.
So that's, again, that'll take some work between John and I, as well as Eric.
And Eric.
On their side of things and Bob.
Okay, I think that's pretty clear. What you're saying is we're going to slow walk as many things as we can until we get deeper into the fiscal year and see if we actually want to reconsider some of these and take them off the books. So basically, you might go to town meeting and ask for a reconsider. Let's use OPEB as the example because that's almost $800,000. We could just do a reconsideration, take it off the books, and not do the injection. We could have a couple of some recommended capital warrant articles on capital infrastructure and say, the administration would like to see these reconsidered, and I would assume town meeting would then do the reconsideration, would take them off the books. Is that where we're headed?
That's 100% correct in terms of structurally how it would go at town meeting. Maybe it would be called a reconsideration. It would be a new budget article to reduce things, a negative budget article, so to speak, or negative warrant article. But
all right. So, like tonight, I looked again at all the warrant articles for schools, which we're going to do tonight, and these all have merit. Let me say, and from my point of view, they all have merit. Some to delay, I would think, would be without question harmful. Some it's going to be up to the discretion of, I think, the school department and the administration to decide if we need to pull money out. Where's the best place to take it out of those and see if we can come up with some. But we don't need to do that right now. I would think the only reason to vote against anything is you just don't want to do it. All right, so I just want to make sure we're right on the numbers here. And so one last thing, I don't want to dominate this. I just got one other little thing that I think is useful to everybody. So when we get into the next fiscal year, we're probably going to get some idea on federal aid to the state, which would in turn help them keep our expectations intact. And if we don't, it's even worse. So it'll be things like cherry sheets, obviously the meals tax, occupancy tax, fees and all that, possibly even excise tax. So when we got an idea of that, that'll tell you roughly how much you need to pull down from revenues that didn't come from taxes. And we're either going to have to pour that into taxes or take stuff off the books. That's where we're headed.
correct.
Okay. All right. So I guess in my mind, there's way too much we don't know. I completely agree with your strategy. I would say September, we're gonna know a lot more, and we can start to at least consider things or maybe take actions. So that helps me out. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Phil.
Yeah, I don't see, my basic position here is just on the back of the envelope. I'm looking between $5 and $7 million in lost revenue when you count in what the potential, now this is between this year and next year, with the loss of water and sewer, hotel and meals are not going to recover rapidly. We don't know what state aid is, and I think another month would be helpful. So I just don't see any reason to vote any of these warrant articles tonight. Waiting another month might clear up the picture a little bit more, and at least doesn't set us back that far. We'll still have another month before town meeting in order to vote them. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a couple questions and comment. What when you said we have $9 million in free cash, we're expecting carryover. Is that after subtracting the $3.9 million if all the warrants went through? And I'm seeing John nod yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Good. And I'm curious procedurally. Once town meeting votes for a warrant article to approve spending money, can it in a later meeting revoke that essentially, as Paul says, a negative financial article?
Yes, they can.
Okay. Um,
Don't they have to reconsider the article with a 2/3 vote, Paul?
I think there's probably a couple different ways to do it procedurally, but I'm not sure if it's a 2/3 vote or we just are proposing to take available funding from a warrant article, which in this case may be the total amount of the warrant article, and either move it someplace else or eliminate it.
okay. And I guess to Frank's point about we should vote yes unless we don't think it should be done at all. I think it boils down to, and I'm trying to decide where I stand on this, but it's not so much that. It really boils down to, by voting yes, we're giving the administration the flexibility to decide what money to spend and when. And they're certainly closest to where things are on the ground with how things are going, versus town meeting having that control. To Phil's point, if town meeting wants to have a tighter rein on what money should be spent when, and make sure we don't get too far ahead of ourselves, then voting to delay at least some of these would be appropriate. I guess the thing that would be interesting to understand it, Phil gave one estimate of 5 to 7 million revenue loss. What is the town's working number as to, and obviously this could change any day, but hopefully at any given point in time, you have an estimate of what you're assuming. What is revenue loss that you're using as a swag to guide your behavior right now?
Well, I think that the obvious one, the hotel and meals, a good quarter of that combined is about 1.2 million. So you could consider a revenue loss of 1.2 million each quarter that the restaurants and hotels are not performing up to. I mean, let's face it, we're just coming off a great period of time for those types of businesses. At least from that standpoint, John, what do we get? We get about 10 million in state aid. So some of that typically gets held harmless, but a 10% cut on state aid could be $1 million at some point, for sure.
Okay, so are you projecting just like a $2.2 million reduction in revenue? Or I guess, let's say the hotel and restaurant goes for, how many quarters are you assuming? Well, I guess I'm just trying to summarize what you're saying. It sounds like if the state aid is 1 million and the hotel and restaurant is 1.2, we're talking about 1.5 million a quarter revenue losses, your projection?
If you assume that for the next fiscal year, we lost the first quarter of the hotel and meals and say we got a 10%, that would be, approximately $2 million for the 21 budget.
Okay. And just for reference, we're, overall, if we have roughly $110 million we're spending. So we're operating at a little over $2 million a week run rate. So, just to take the absurd position, if, revenues went to zero, between the 9 million stabilization or 8 stabilization, 9 million free cash, we could operate about 2 months before the well rent went dry, even with absolutely zero revenue. So that's just another data point. All right, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, 2 other points. Don't forget abatements. Our top 10 taxpayers pay $28 million in taxes, and they're all closed at this point. And we're also almost completely shut down the water billing, with the exception of the residential. We have a complete water ban, and those, with the exception of Leahy Clinic, our top 10 water users, including restaurants and hotels, are all shut down at this point. So there's more than just hotel and meals tax revenue that's at risk here. Thank you.
Yep, a lot of different sources of revenue. Anybody else have questions?
Hey, Roger, this is Mike. Can you hear me? So just a quick, easy question. When is town meeting scheduled for?
June 10th.
Jen,
June 10th, okay. All right, thanks.
So Roger, this is Frank again.
Yep, Frank.
So to Phil's point, I think Phil is really suggesting a procedural behavior, which is we table warrants for another month or something already. And maybe we'll know more in late May and have our meetings then and vote the articles. Is that your thinking, Phil?
You,
That's exactly my thinking.
Right.
No, I'm not for or against anything in particular as far as spending is concerned, but we went through this in 2008 when we had a crash in commercial real estate values, and it had a significant impact on the residential ratepayer. So I mean, I can't project, and I don't think Paul can at this point,
Right.
with any accuracy, how deep these cuts are going to be in those revenues.
So I
I
think,
don't think a month will hurt us.
well, okay, so I think, Roger, this is really how you want to handle this. I don't think the committee should take every article one by one, and some people are voting, we're going to table them one by one or vote them. I think we should make a somewhat uniform decision. Either we're going to vote them tonight or we're going to reconvene. We'll discuss and reconvene. But the most you can wait, Phil, is a month. That's the most you can wait. I mean, we still have to meet, right? So I don't think we're going to know a hell of a lot more in a month.
all right, Phil, you had another comment, Phil?
No, I just say we still have budgets to vote between now and then, so there's still work to be done. But the warrant articles typically could be held until the last, until the last few minutes. Even a month from now, we'd still have almost 3.5 weeks before town meeting. And as you recall, this committee has many times voted warrant articles on the night of town meeting. So I don't think we're pressed for time.
Okay, well, go ahead, Roger. It's up to you, Roger, to handle that.
All right, I think Paul's got a comment. Paul?
I was just going to say that, we're still hopeful to have town meeting on June 10th at this point, depending upon what phase Massachusetts may fall in under the CDC reopening guidelines. We're in discussions now with the moderator and the town clerk just to say, how can we hold town meeting safely and within the guidelines that are set forward? I think if we're lucky enough to get there by June 10th, I think allow for maybe 50 people size gathering without social distancing. So we'll be considering how do we get all of our town meeting members and how do we get them do we split them into separate auditoriums? And again, you add into the fact we may be able to hold the meeting, but some people may not want to participate in the meeting. So I guess that's in the back of our head too, is how do we make people feel safe and comfortable enough, to gather in that type of format. So, I mean, we're very hopeful that we can do town meeting on June 10th, believe me, but I would say that there's still quite a bit of discussion to be had on that topic as well.
Yeah, so I think Ways and Means, I think we need to do our job in a timely way, assuming that town meeting is going to work out the way it's currently scheduled. The amount of the warrant articles, as has been said, is only is just under $4 million. So that's a fairly small percentage of the overall both free cash. Well, I guess it's almost half the free cash, and considering the stabilization, there's quite a bit more there.
Roger, I had a thought. I mean, procedurally, we could do it the way we've done budgets in the past, where we hear everything and then at the end, we take a final vote on everything later. So I mean, we could still get our work done, review all the warrants, but not vote them until later in the cycle.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. So I think I hadn't really nailed down the contents of the agendas for the other Ways and Means meetings into May. But it seemed like we might need one May 6th and May 13th. We certainly could put off voting till then. I personally don't know that we'll actually know that much more about our position, the revenue position. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. Just one point earlier, actually, we have voted almost all of the operating budgets. The only thing really that's left is the warrant articles. So we're about where we will have, well, a couple of weeks delayed over previous years. So I think if the committee thinks we should put off voting until a later meeting, we can do that pretty easily. At that point, maybe we can vote them all at once with one vote, not have to do 45 roll call votes. So
We may know better also whether the June 10th is even going to happen, you know?
yes.
It's not really June 10th that's the important date per se, town meeting. We have to have something in place before the fiscal year starts.
Back from getting those things approved, right? Is to go to town meeting, work back from there to the printing and the publication dates. It's really probably in the middle of May is the cutoff to actually make that happen.
I think the
I have a question.
date's around May 13th, Mr. Chairman.
So anyway, for this week, I'm fine with not voting these. Well, let's vote the school budgets that are on the agenda, but we don't have to agree that we can put off voting the warrant articles for a future meeting.
Do you need a motion for that? Because I can make, I support hearing the content tonight and then voting at a future meeting. Make that motion.
Yes, but I think I guess we're on the topic, so sure. What's the motion?
I'll make a motion that we hear the content of the warrant articles tonight, but we make a vote at a future meeting. If you need to make it date certain, I could make it like May 13th or something like that.
At the moment, I would go week per week, but it's your motion, so you get to choose.
I leave it at the discretion of the chair. I'm fine with that.
All right. Actually, before somebody seconds, maybe it's too late.
Back.
Anyway, sorry, Phil, you had a comment? You're on mute.
So I'll second it if you need a second. This is Frank.
All right.
And for discussion, I do have a comment I want to make.
All right, Phil, you're unmuted. What were you going to say, Phil?
I would just say that the printing date matters not at all, because we can put all of these warrant articles into the warrant, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be approved or that they're going to have positive Ways and Means recommendations.
Understood.
It makes no difference.
Just trying to be aware of the other calendar activities that go on in parallel. So, all right. So, Frank, you had a comment about the motion on the floor?
Yes, a suggestion I've got is we probably can't do it tonight, but for both the town side warrants and the school warrants, it would be nice the next time we take up warrants if each side could bracket all their articles into two groups, urgent and less urgent. I mean, I already know there's nothing on here that they don't feel strongly about across the board, or they wouldn't be here. But it might help us if we could already get a bracketing, which will set the stage for anything that we either flat out don't support, or it creates some documentation going into September for the administration and the superintendent to start to think about where they might offer up any holdbacks or pullouts. I think grouping these into one more category might be helpful across the board. And it doesn't mean 50-50. They could be all high priority, but two are medium priority. It doesn't matter.
It's time frame more than priority, right?
Oh, yes. It means now versus 1 or 2 years from now. That's what it means.
You meant whether they can start working on them in the summer before September meeting.
No, I'm thinking whether they would stay on the warrant.
Okay.
Right, so let's vote on this. We can do a roll call, and then we can move on to the technical school budgets, but that's all right. Brad Bonds. So we're voting on delaying voting on the warrants until a future meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Diane Creedon.
Yes.
Thank you. Doug Davison.
Yes.
Um, David Tate. I think he said he was going to be late. Frank.
Yes.
Eschery.
Yes.
Thank you. John Eiler.
Yes.
Mike Hardy.
Yes.
Phil Gallagher. Muted, Phil.
No.
Wait a minute. This was a vote to delay? Okay, that's
I
fine.
don't even want to talk about him for a month.
Okay. Rob Newfeld.
Yes.
Tony Rollins.
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
Susan Harrigan.
Yes.
Tom Killahay. I don't think Tom's with us this evening. Uh, 9 in favor, 1 opposed. No abstentions. All right. All right. Thanks for that. Shall we move on to the school subcommittee and the Shawsheen budgets? Susan, are you leading this discussion?
John will do Shawsheen.
Okay. Start, John.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can you introduce our guests while you're?
Absolutely. That's how I was going to start. I'd like to thank Ms. Melanie Hagman for her patience. Melanie is the interim superintendent director of Shawsheen. You may recall that she was in the same position at our budget meetings last year also. Shawsheen has a permanent superintendent hunt that's still underway, but I believe they're closing in on some finalists. So Ms. Hagman will have a presentation for us shortly after I speak also. You should all have a copy of the operating and capital budget documents, which I'm not planning to go through in detail, and also a copy of the presentation that's coming up, which I'll reference just a few slides in there, but let Ms. Hagman do the presentation on that. So Shawsheen is our vocational school that is covered by a 5-town regional agreement with Burlington, Bedford, Billerica, Tewksbury, and Wilmington. And I think it's appropriate to think of it, it's both a school district, obviously, but it's also sort of like a mini town. So a lot of the things that we might think of as normally town budget items, like OPEB and snow plowing and so forth, are included within the Shawsheen budget also. And when we talk about the budget, it's a combination of the normal operating budget and the capital budget together. And something we'll see in some of the other schools is transportation is broken out and the assessment is a separate thing. Transportation is included within the budget numbers that we're talking about here. So I'm going to attempt to share a document here. Let's see if that works. 1 second.
It may not, or I have to let you do it. Oh, there it comes.
Let's see what happens.
Yep,
Do
it's
you,
coming.
do you see that?
Yep.
It's a miracle. Okay. So this is just slide 8 of the presentation. So this is showing the capital budget. And as you can see, it's essentially flat from last year at approximately 1.2 million. And now if we go to slide 11, you'll see the operating side of the budget. This is at 31.5 million, and that's up 2.97% from last year. And if you look at the total of 32.7 million, the total budget, capital and operating, is up 2.84%. So a couple of things to note on this. this is completely in line with the projections that were given in the Shawsheen 5-year plan. So it shouldn't be a surprise number. And just relative to the overall Burlington guideline of 3.5% and the school guideline in particular 3.75%, it's noticeably below that. So a new 5-year plan, I think there's sort of a tentative plan, but it's not completely done as I understand it, is underway. And something else to note is that Shawsheen is in a 50-year-old building. So much like you're hearing the Burlington schools are looking to do some building, there's potential expense in our future there also. There's nothing written down yet on that, but it won't be a surprise to see that there might be something coming up on that in the future. So what does this mean in terms of our assessment? If we jump ahead to slide 16, I'll try to make this a little bigger. I don't know if you can see that or not. Is Burlington's assessment is for FY21 is proposed at 2,516,373, and that's up 5.3% from last year. So if the budget went up 2.8, why is our assessment up 5.3? The answer is that we have more students going there for one. So the Burlington student head count went from 123 to 127, which is an increase of 3.3%. So if you add that to 2.8 budget increase, you would expect that we might see something like a 6.1% increase, but because we're under our student allocation in the agreement and due to how the formulas work, therefore the increase is actually less than you might anticipate by simply adding those numbers together. So if you take that assessment and simply divide it by 127 students, you'll come up with a figure of $19,814 per Burlington student. So something of interest to me is how does that compare to what we see in the Burlington schools? And I'll do something that I'm sure isn't truly an apples to apples kind of comparison. But if we take the Burlington operating budget of FY20 and increase it by the 3.75% guideline, the 53.5 million, and add the accommodated account for the schools of 12 million, and notwithstanding our earlier discussion, add in the 1.6 million for warrant articles, you would come up with roughly $69.5 million being spent for Burlington school budget over 3,666 students approximately. So if you divide that out, you end up with 18,945 versus to 19,814 for Shawsheen. So the net of all that is that on a per student basis, in a very precise but perhaps not entirely accurate method, you end up with Shawsheen students are basically about 5% more expensive. So it's just sort of an interesting comparison. It's not so in particular, I think I know in the past I've always imagined that they were vastly more expensive, but I don't think the numbers bear that out. So the subcommittee, the subcommittee for Shawsheen voted 2-0 to support this, and the school subcommittee voted 5-0-0 to support the assessment of 2,516,373.
Thanks, John. Just
I'm going to unshare the document here just as soon as I can get my windows fixed here again.
Right. John, just one operational thing. I think for a lot of people, I saw a lot of hashed cover up of the slides. They didn't come through cleanly, and I don't know whether that was WebEx. What part of WebEx was messing it up?
My apologies.
It may have been that when you were moving the mouse around, that it was interfering with the way it could update it.
Got it now.
It's,
Do you see it now?
Yeah, it's too small to read anyway.
Okay. Well, anyway, you have the presentations. This is slide 16. If you have the presentation file that was emailed out, and I apologize that yeah, I was using some of my other windows, and no doubt that screwed up the sharing somehow. So sorry for that.
right. Just figure out how to use the tool as nicely as possible. All right, so
I'll get there eventually.
what's the handoff to the next?
So yes.
Quick question, Roger.
Yeah, Phil. I mean, yes, Michael.
When was that? I'm looking for the document. Who emailed that and when?
I believe Susan mailed that. And Susan, when did you mail that out?
I did email it out, I want to say over the weekend. We met last Thursday? I think I sent it out last Thursday night, the Shawshene stuff, and then later I sent, just yesterday, I sent the other technical school information. I have to look for sure. I know I resent it to Roger, now I'm getting all mixed up.
Yeah, I got a couple things from you, but I don't have.
It had 3 attached files to it. Oh yeah, I sent it on April 16th at 5:30.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see that.
Okay. Let me see, are you on here? Yeah, you're on here. All right.
I don't know if it's
Why
every.
don't we press on and I'll resend it. I'll forward it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, John, what's next?
So I'm going just handing this over to Ms. Hagman for her presentation, please.
Great. Melanie, I think you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Welcome.
perfect. We've been having issues with our technology over here, so if something happens, please let me know. So I am fortunate tonight to have Dave Norkowitz with me. He's our Director of Vocational Technical Programs. He's actually been at the school a little bit longer than me, I think about 24, 25 years in various roles along the way. So I asked him to join me. He was kind enough to join me with the finance as well last week. So here we are in front of you. So thank you all for inviting us. So some of you have a presentation, so I'll be a little brief because John did a great job and I feel I spent a lot of time with him and I appreciate his time. So I just want to start off with our first slide, talks a little bit about our skills team. And it really is because of everyone's support and our wonderful students here. We were able to send 8 students to Skills National, brought home 2 gold and 1 silver, and it's a great experience for our students to go and to compete. As you can see, they're all smiles and wonderful to see such great accomplishments. Our average daily attendance before all of this was 96.13%. And we truly believe our average daily attendance is high because our students want to be here. We're showing pictures of our students here on a Saturday. We had a trunk or treat here, and the students volunteered to be here to give out candy to the community. We have our students volunteer at road shows in our 5 towns. We have swim meets. I told you last year about our esports program. Proud to say that we have a varsity esports team. Extremely successful. We have about 40 kids here every afternoon, and it's really taken off. We had students go into Boston to compete for culinary. So again, it's just our students want to be here, and these are just all great accomplishments. Our cooperative education program, we have 64% of our seniors for the last 5 years have been on co-op. We have 150 employer partnerships. Of those, 75 of them are repeat partnerships. They love employing our kids. We have great feedback for them. Some businesses are actually allowing our students to work from home right now. That's how much they value their partnership. We have $165,000 of combined monthly wages that's earned by our students and typically spent within our district. So they're giving back. And we remain to be ranked one of the top 2 schools co-op in the state. Here we are. This past year, we had a group of over 50 students from 5 different technical areas in our advanced manufacturing cluster that participated in the National Manufacturing Day. and it's a company in Billerica. We invited our students in. They worked on this beautiful sign that we're now proudly displaying down in our mall area. And again, it's just businesses want to partner with us. Our MCAS performance with this new generation is still high. More to come on this as we know. Now, talking a little bit just about the capital budget highlights. You all have it in front of you, but in there, there's an engineering component that's $44,000. We received $200,000 in a grant, Mass Skills Capital Grant, and we were required to have a match. So we budgeted $44,000 in capital to purchase computers for them. Again, that would match this grant. We need to replace our energy management system. It's breaking down. The computer that it's currently running on is almost on its last leg, and it's an old operating system. So unfortunately, in order to do that, we need to replace a lot of controls in our building. We have a stadium project that we started a few years ago. We're still working off our plumbing variants in the town of Billerica. So we have money in there to finish this project. We are fortunate right now, we have a contractor out there working for us. We need to replace some basketball rims in our gym. Actually, it needs a lot more work. We talked about a floor and bleachers, but we're holding off on that because that's something that's going to have to be done at the same time. We don't want to do one without the other. So we've pushed that off another year. We have a school dump truck, which I know sounds a little crazy, but we have these new micro buses that we're required to buy to transport our students to the different towns, to the different projects that we're doing. And it's very difficult for our teachers to drive these with students and have a trailer with all their tools required. So this dump truck will be able to be used by the construction trade cluster. They can move all of their equipment on site, and then it can come back here and it can be used for our maintenance department. We have a dust collector and a few other things that require different moving parts, and the dump truck will be able to be used throughout the building versus just one department. So that's about $60,000. Going back to what John said, this capital budget, it's something that we've given you over the past few years. It's in line. The total is $1.5 million. We received money in grants, so there's about $71,000 in Perkins, $66,000 in revolving accounts. We have our LPN program that generates some revenue, so we're able to use that. And then I was projecting $216 in budget excess, if possible, to be able to fund some of these other projects. And that would bring us down to a total town assessment of the $1.2 million capital budget. Moving on to our operating budget, the total budget is up $900,000. $499,000 is due to contract negotiations. We're in the process of hopefully finalizing our contract. We're waiting for a school committee vote. There's $166,000 for all other salaries outside the teacher's contract. So it's whether it's clerical or it's maintenance, we have childcare employees, we have custodians here. So all of the salary increase would be the $151,000 is due to Middlesex and our OPEB increase. $33,000 for safety enhancements. We need to buy new radios. We have certain areas of our building that our radios, unfortunately, just don't work. Down in our 100 wing, it's very difficult if somebody has an emergency to call them on the radio. So we would actually have to buy repeaters and work through a whole process, but it's something the world we live in that we really feel is necessary. Other than those highlights, all other line items are up $153,000. And kind of, not in my slide, but kind of going back to your conversation earlier, Dave Norkowitz and I have been working on a daily basis, reviewing current budget and next year's budget to come up with a game plan on reducing the budget. So it is something that we are also looking at, very close look at all of our line items together. Our OPEB funding. So our net asset value at June 30, 2019 was $2.5 million, and our total benefit obligation is $30 million. Remember you asked me last year, so I made sure I put that in there for you. Our FY21 proposed operating budget, again, going back to what John talked about, 31,486,000. Total capital assessment 1.2 million for a total budget 32,700,000. The proposed assessments, just to give you again a little bit of breakdown to show that your increase, yes, is up to 5.3%. You have 4 additional students. Good news, acceptance-wise, you're going to be up more than that next year. We have accepted 43 new students from Burlington, so the letters have gone out. So that's exciting for us. Maybe not for you, but exciting for us. Our enrollment, again, does continue to decline. We've lost another 30 students. We have been on the decline. And unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of our towns are losing enrollment district-wide. It isn't something that's unique to us. The only one that has gone up is Bedford. It is not a typo with Billerica. Billerica is the same number. I went on DES's website, and that is correct, actually. That is the same number. So just to show you a little bit of that, I put in some, again, this was back in February when I first met with John, some application information for you. I know people are concerned that we're losing students, but we were up. Last year, we had 421 applications. Our total final applications for next school year was 448 students. The plan is to accept 360 to hope for a class of 340. As you know, when you accept students, some withdraw for unknown reasons, whether it's I've changed my mind or I want to be with my friends or whatnot. So we hope to accept 360 for a class like this. I think somehow my slides got out of order. I apologize for that. Then the projected assessments page, I know John already kind of went over a little bit, so I don't know do that. I shorthand right, but in a nutshell, students come here. We believe they come here to unleash their passion. They love being here. We did a great project with Tewksbury, Shawshene Tech, and Tewksbury Habitat Build. Maybe next year Burlington can be in there. David Markowitz is always looking for projects to do with our communities, and it's something to help us in the workplace. And again, I truly want to thank you for all your support. I believe we have a great school, and we couldn't do it without our 5 towns that support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. John, do you have anything to add, or are there questions from the committee?
Actually, I just had one question for Melanie. I was just curious, the online model doesn't work so well with co-op. I'm curious how your whole internship program is working out with the current situation.
I'd like to defer that to Dave. That's why I brought him.
That's a great question, John. Our teachers are very creative. As you know, we're based on project-based activities, and we have done some things above and beyond using the technology of computers. I know in one case, I'll give you an example, one of the activities for the carpentry students was that they were sent out to find different types of leaves. And they were going to take those leaves and figure out what trees they came from, and then do a little research project on the type of wood and the woods that we use in the carpentry. So it was a matter of getting the students out, being engaged in the outside, obviously being with the social distance, and then creating that activity into a research project, which can be done basically all week with all the different leaves that they were finding out in the community. As far as the co-op, we did pull the plug on our co-op in regards to using the different regulations that we require in our program. But we did find out that many companies that probably 12 to 15 of our students are now currently working at home via the discretion of the companies, which tells me that they really respect and are getting productive students from our school. We also have a few students that are just working without using the co-op regs, but at the discretion of the company and their parents, feeling that they're safe to do such jobs at this time.
Great, thanks.
Very welcome.
Other questions? All right. Shall we move on to?
Sorry, I do have one question. I couldn't find the unmute button fast enough.
Steve.
So I do have a question. You say that we're going to go to 43 students next year. Does that bring us above that magic 10% number? When do we specifically hit that, which would cause the additional cost to come in?
We've accepted 43 students, so they've confirmed there might be a few more, so we're waiting to hear back to get a final number. So you have 128 now, that would bring you to 139 if everything stays as is going into the fall. And that would be out of possibly 1,272 students. Like I said, so we've heard back and confirmed 320 students. And we're still waiting 40 more. We've accepted, we haven't heard from them. So they're reaching out right now because this is all new for us. So this is all electronic. Usually we send out packages, we talk to people, but now we're doing it differently. So there's still 40 more students out there that we're waiting to hear back from the state. But as of right now, there's 43 from Burlington that have confirmed acceptance. I just got the numbers today. So I've just been working on them in preparation for tonight's meeting.
Okay. So it sounds like we'll be slightly above it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Okay.
Right about there, yep.
All right. You warned us that this day would come.
I did. That's gonna be up another 8 students. They're on a roll.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, John.
just operationally, I believe the way the budget's written is Shawsheen is one line item, and then Essex and Minuteman are combined into a second line item.
That's fine. Do you procedurally?
I'm only highlighting that because I believe there may be a little. I'm not sure how it'll turn out, but there may be some discussion on the Minuteman line item in particular that we may want to keep those separate for voting purposes.
Okay. Well, for the moment, like with other things, why don't we hear about all three schools, and then we'll figure out how to vote them.
Very good.
All right. So your part with Shawsheen. Who's going to tell us about Minuteman and Essex?
This is Susan. I think I will. I did send an email yesterday with information about these two schools. It basically is a table, and you'll see Minuteman and Essex North Shore at the top of the table with the tuitions and the calculations down. The Minuteman has a different situation. Just on April 2nd, we got a letter saying that even though we're not a member town, we are assessed a piece of their capital fee that turned out to the $5,883. The two tuitions are very similar, right around $18,000 per student. But we also have to pay a capital fee at Minuteman, which is brand new. And as a matter of fact, this is the first time we've even had to ever even talk about the Minuteman budget. I think it always came off the cherry sheet or something before. So this is the first year we have both Minuteman and Essex North Shore, where we send a few students for each one. The majority of our technical students, of course, do go to Shawsheen, but if the student wants to go to a school that wants to major in something that Shawsheen doesn't offer, I believe is how it's set up, they can choose other schools. And Essex North Shore is the agricultural school, so if they want farm animals or farming, that kind of thing, they can choose Essex North Shore. And Minuteman has I think one program, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. But the other thing, as you move down that table, if you can see it, is the transportation cost at Minuteman was substantially higher than Essex North Shore. So dug a little more into that. Essex North Shore owns their own bus fleet and they provide the transportation, and they charge $2,500-ish per student. Whereas Minuteman, we arrange the transportation through a bus vendor, and it's $14,000 per student, which is $235 per day, coming out to that number. So the cost per student is, substantially higher at Minuteman than it is at Essex North Shore. The number of students at Minuteman, as you can see, is 3 at Minuteman. Essex North Shore has 2 that are in 9th grade and 11th grade, I believe they are. And then there's 3 who were accepted. Again, just like Melanie was talking about with Shawsheen, just because they're accepted doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go. But there's also the wait list, so that a Burlington student could end up in one of those slots if the one who does get accepted decides not to take the seat. So as you can see, the math comes down to the 217, 424 for both schools together. When we met as a subcommittee, we didn't actually vote this number because we wanted to investigate this transportation price just to make sure that there wasn't a mistake when I first received the information. Because at first I was thinking maybe that 14,000 was for all 3 students. So in order to clarify, I did get that clarified with Nicole, actually, who told me that that transportation cost is based on what we in Burlington arranged for these students. So there is no subcommittee vote because we were trying to still chase down that $14,000 number. And I don't know if Nicole's on or John, if they want to add anything, John and Ezio, but that's the information that we have.
All right. So, anybody have anything to add about that subject?
Actually, I did, please.
Yeah, John.
More of a question, I guess. At the risk of sounding like Phil and getting into bus business here, the Minuteman cost ends up being, transportation is $40 per trip per student, and one could imagine we rent limos or or whatever for a lower cost. So I'm just curious if I don't know if Dr. Connie would know to answer this, if there's some special transportation needs that are coming into play here, or is this truly just moving students around is just outrageously expensive, and maybe we could consider some alternatives there.
John, this is Eric. I think it's just the price that we're charged by Minuteman. We could look into other options, but we have to get the kids to school.
My understanding from the note from Nicole is that it's not a Minuteman assessment, but it's just a direct transportation cost pass through, or I'm not sure if I'm reading the email correctly.
I haven't seen the email. I need to look at it, but we could certainly look at how we work with the collaborative, where we can work with other communities who also have students attending Minuteman, and maybe look at those costs.
Other questions? Actually,
Mr. Chairman, this is Frank.
yeah, Frank.
So who's for the Minuteman transportation? Who owns the contract, Minuteman, or is Burlington using its bus contract to service Burlington students to Minuteman?
Bob Kuhn is shaking his head no. Is that an answer, Bob?
So I don't know if you're on, Bob.
Yeah, I know. I didn't say anything. So this is Bob Kuhn from the school department. I'm not aware of a charge of Minuteman against the bus contract. Again, we can double check that with Nicole, but I'm not aware of one.
This is Susan. Nicole thought it might be Christensen who does this transportation, And she needed to validate that as well. But basically she was saying that they charge us $235 a day. So that's where the 14,000 comes from. And it is, you know, of course, Essex North Shore has their own bus fleet, so it is a very different situation. And they do charge, they set that rate. Marie gave us that number. But from what Nicole told me, transportation really isn't assessed by Minuteman. It's Christensen, I think, is a vendor, another vendor that you use for smaller transportation needs, from what I know. Limited position. So again, we just got this information yesterday, which is why the subcommittee never actually voted on these numbers. I don't know if you want to hold this as well and just vote Shasheen. It's up to you if you, how the whole committee feels at this point. I know in the grand scheme of things of the whole budget, it's not a huge amount of money and can still be worked out over the summer because obviously it's going to go down, not up. But it's up to you all how you.
Well, this is Frank. I had asked the question. I'm just trying to get a sense of scale here. I can't really tell if that looks like an insane number or in fact it's relatively proportional to what it would take to move a student for a year between essentially Lexington and Burlington.
I tried to compare against the special ed transportation. You know, that's the other place we move kids as special ed transportation, but those are usually wheelchair vans and such. So I don't really know. That's a good point.
Yeah, I think we've got to put this off and come back with a little better details, accurate details.
Yeah, we actually have a school subcommittee meeting tomorrow, I believe. So we may be able to get more information then, hopefully.
All right.
And quick question also, Roger, they mentioned, I guess we haven't seen Minuteman. I don't remember seeing that, and it's due to a particular topic of study. I'd be interested to know what that is.
Okay, I will check that for you. I know I had it at one point, but I've lost it at this moment. So I will let you know for sure. But students can't go outside of the Shawshene district if they want technical unless there's a reason for it. And it's usually based on the major that they have. I want to say it's biotech actually is what's coming to my mind, but I have to validate that.
Okay. So I'm going to come back to both Minuteman and Essex next week or at a future meeting when we've got some of this details ironed out. And with that, I think we can vote the Shawshene budget because it's the assessment. And we can let them go home. Is there anything else on this Shawshene topic?
Roger, this is Frank again. If this isn't quick to Melanie, then forget it. But you had one slide that showed about a $900,000 increase, and you broke that down into like 5 items, and one of them was OPEB in Middlesex. Sound familiar? Okay, and the amount listed for those was $51,000. That's supposed to be an increase slide. Is that actually the increase for OPEB and the Middlesex retirement?
It's the increase for the teaching because the Middlesex is a in the OPEB we had one of the agreements that we with the state was 9% increase every year. That's why I just wanted to show those separately.
Okay, so do you know the Middlesex assessment? I couldn't quite hear you.
It's on page 16. The Middlesex assessment is $719,000. So it's on page 16 of our budget.
Okay, I'll forget it, but somehow that 51K, it doesn't seem possible that could be the increase in 1 year. I mean, it doesn't even come. It's way too big. To me. So I'm willing to vote this with that open. It might be something you could just look at to make sure that my my antenna is just being triggered falsely. But based on what I know of Burlington's assessments, it's insane. And our OPEB is for the entire town, and our increase is like 800. Yeah, well, I take it back. It could be. Forget it. Forget it. It could be that big. Thank you.
I was gonna say, yeah, so our Middlesex assessment is going up 34,000, and our OPEB, we are budgeting for an increase of about 17,000. So that's what I'm saying, combined.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
All right, anything else before we do a roll call vote on the Shawshene budget? If not, sorry. I didn't hear that, but okay. Brad Bond?
Yes.
Diane Keaton?
Yes.
Davidson? You, Doug?
I'm trying. There, we got it. Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Ashri Paraganti?
Yes.
Thank you. John Eiler?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
Keller?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Tony Rollins?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Susan Harrigan?
Yes.
All right, looks like 12-0-0. Thank you. And we'll come back to Minuteman and ethics in our next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie and Dave. All right, that brings us around to the Burlington Public School warrant articles. Susan, how are we going to walk through these? Hopefully
Well, I
everyone.
guess I'll take you through them, and give you what I know, and Bob, of course, can jump in when I can't remember things. So I guess just start at the top at 2101, the interactive technology article for $85,000. This article is for these products, I guess, for the Early Childhood Center, some interactive technology for those young students, because nowadays technology starts really young. And this includes some computers, a charging station, some interactive software, and the total article is for $85,000 for the Early Childhood Center. Bob, do you want to add more to this one?
The only thing I'd like to add too is that there's 13 rooms in the Early Childhood Center, and these would also have displays as well too. So they would include new projectors that are interactive.
Thank you. So the subcommittee voted, the school committees voted all of these and approved them all, and this subcommittee, Ways and Means School Subcommittee, also voted 5-0-0 to approve. Any questions on that one? No. Okay. The next one is Article 2102, $125,000. This is for the third boiler repair at the Marshall Simons Middle School. There's 3 boilers altogether, and this is the third one that we're repairing. They were installed in 2004. The estimates are based on the last repair we did last September. In your original package on page 11 and 12, you'll see we had purchase orders about $100,000. In the supplement that I sent, I also sent the actual invoices that supported the purchase order. If you look at that, you'll see the original purchase, the original estimate was for about almost 90,000, and there was about 10,000 in change orders, bringing the total project up to about 100,000 last fall. So Bob budgeted, the school budgeted 125,000, again, because these are old and they have to have some room for change orders because things are always found once you start opening things up. So this is the third of the 3. This is a middle school, and the school committee and the subcommittee all voted 5-0-0 to approve. Bob, do you have anything else on that one?
The only thing I'd like to add, Diane, thanks, is that so there was a approximately $7,000 engineering charge as well too to have the bids prepared, $100,000 and some change in order to do the repair work. And like you did say that we do an estimate in order to do the bid, but once it's actually torn down, that's when the change order may or may not come into place once people know what actual damage is done. So in the also supporting materials that I sent to the Ways and Means Subcommittee, there was a document that included the bid results where we had one person come in at 83,000, one person come in around 95,000, one person come in about 120,000. We actually had somebody come in about 180,000. So we get prices all over the place when the bid comes in. So that's why there's about $12,000 to $13,000 additional above why I'm asking for 125,000.
Any questions on the boiler?
You probably answered this last year, but what is the life expectancy of the 3 boilers and the repairs and going forward? So this would be the third of 3, so we wouldn't necessarily see this for a while. I'm just wondering how long that while is.
Mr. Moore, that's a very good question. So originally when these were installed in 2004, they had a 10-year warranty on them. So we got between 14 to 16 years out of them, which is not ideal, but it is above the warranty. The warranty on these, because they're being repaired, is not the full 10 years. But because we're doing full internals, we are expecting to get similar, 10 to 15 years out of them. Because we're doing an extensive replacement on the internals.
And that's compared with the cost of how much for a new boiler?
When it was done in 2004, it was $4.2 million to renovate the whole middle school boiler room and do all the connections into the new system.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right. We shall move on to the 2103, which is the varsity field turf replacement. This is a $500,000 article. If you look at the backup, you'll see that we also got an estimate to resurface the track, but that is being delayed. So the components of that $500,000 request is the $50,000 site preparation and the $441 for the field resurfacing. We don't have to re-engineer. You see the $25,000 at the top for an engineering cost. We don't have to redo the engineering because it's going to be the same layout. It's just resurfacing the field and with a little buffer for any unforeseen problems. And so again, the school committee and school subcommittee voted 5-0 to support this replacement. Any questions on that one? Bob, do you have anything to add? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that originally we got an estimate to replace both the track and the turf field at the same exact time, but that could not be done. They would have to physically be done at 2 separate times. Given the condition of the track, we thought it made sense to actually split them up and do them in 2 separate years. We would like to do the track first. I'm sorry, the field first, just because we don't want to run new equipment over a new track. So definitely you do the field first. That's the recommendation in the industry, and then do the track later on. So I would say that you would look to see next year the track resurfacing as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Phil.
I walk fast down there on the field, and I'm of the opinion that it's not necessary to replace this field. It's in pretty good condition. So I would just suggest the other members go down there and take a look. Thank you.
Was going to be how are the conditions described that warrant it to be replaced?
I didn't provide this, but I will provide this to the committee. We do what's called the GMAC testing, which is the hardness testing every single year, which is required by MIA Sports. And what happens is every year they assess the hardness of the actual turf field. So from the date that it's installed, every year it gets worked over, new rubber and sand gets put into it, And after time, that gets compacted, very dense. So like I said, with the testing, there's acceptable limits and not acceptable limits. We are still within those, but we're closer to that border right now. So that's where we gauge whether or not it's time to assess the field replacement or reconditioning.
Mr. Chairman, this is Frank.
Go ahead.
So this falls, Bob, into the category, if it's possible to do it, and to split all of these things into more urgent than others. And the question on this one, especially because it's $500,000, is would it fall into the less urgent, meaning that it would not be a safety problem if it went another full year as a minimum, which would also probably push the track out another year. And that's a question that you don't have to answer now, but that's the thought process here.
Yeah, so obviously none of us have a crystal ball, and I can't, predict the future. What I would say is that it passes the test now, and don't look to be having spring sports. But at the same exact time, when we test it next year, we won't know what that condition is. If we thought that we had 3 years left before we had to replace the field, I don't think you'd see it this year as a request. If we were to put it off, like I said, not that we would have to be careful how we use it next year. I think that it would definitely push necessity closer towards next year's replacement, which then again may impact us needing to do the track as well during that same time frame. So we're looking to kind of split those projects up, but also meet the requirements of when it needed to get done. So I understand what you're saying, Frank, and I do think this is a large sum of money, and we would obviously consider all of these if the requirement or the request came from the town or your committee to, reduce our requests. And this may be a strong one because it is a large number, but it's definitely a strong recommendation that we would look to replace that soon, and potentially this year or next year.
Yeah, so you probably want to talk about this within the subcommittee and the school committee, but this does look like one that you might put in the second half of the list, for example. So I don't want you to decide it here. I just want to make it, we're getting enough discussion on it now, I think, to Phil's point. Although, Phil, you're walking on it versus a high impact sports safety thing, quite the same thing. So we really do need to go by the criteria for usability. Point is,
I'd make this comment that and ask Bob, the cushioning material is rubber particles.
decided here.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Isn't the cushioning material just a bunch of rubber particles that can be easily added to the top surface?
So your answer is yes, except that's the problem that causes the compactness because they're rubber pellets mixed with sand. And what happens is that when they put on, there's a buffer between the sand and the rubber pellets. Over time, they get packed down. So what happens is we go with a machine and fluff them up, but then people will walk on it, run on it, play football on it, and it gets packed down again. Then we put more rubber and sand onto it. So what happens is over time, you get dense areas of tight, compacted rubber and sand. That's upwards of 10 to 14 inches thick. And that's where the problem lies, and it gets harder. So we would have to strip all of the turf out, all of the rubber and sand out, to then put the new turf and rubber down.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Phil.
So this is Mike. I just had a couple questions. How old is that track? I forget. I mean, the field. When did we put that in?
This is year 10.
Year 10. Okay. I just Googled it. It said 10 to 15 years typical lifespan. But then they say with extra care it could be longer than that. And I was going to ask you, we did at one point buy a fluffer machine. I think is the way I describe it. Is that what you're talking about? Are we doing that?
We do have the compound material that we add in, which is the rubber. We have the sand, and we do have that machine as well too, in order to fluff the material. Yes. We also have it professionally serviced once a year as required.
Okay. So I was going to ask if there's an extra step we could take to try to soften the field or something that would buy us an extra year or so. It sounds like you're doing most everything already, but something to consider. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So Bob, just a quick question. What's the normal sort of lead time for this? Even if it was approved in July, would it get done this season?
Depending on if we had an inkling that we were able to get funding for July, we could probably line a vendor up. I think right now a lot of vendors are looking for work and trying to schedule for the summertime. I think a lot of people will promise you yes. So in a perfect world, it'd be very, very tight to our September schedule for football. If we could not get it done for September, we would probably look to do it either late, closer towards December. If not, we would have to push it off to the following year and do it basically when school gets out, right around June, right after graduation.
Yeah. Okay. So there is quite a bit of lead time, and generally, I think it does sound like something we could put off a year with that in mind. So great. More questions for the subcommittee when they meet next. Susan, back to you.
All right. The next one, Article 2104, is the music department install and upgrades. This is for the high school to put in some lockers and some sound deadening equipment. The lockers, I believe this is for the strings, and I hope I'm right about that. I can't remember anymore, because they never had string instruments. They have not had string storage cabinets either. The quote that you have was from February of 2019. In the supplement I sent around, it's the exact same quote, but it does have an updated date of March 31st of 2020. So the numbers haven't changed from the original package. I just wanted to, we just got to make sure the quote was still valid. This was supposed to be 3 phases, but they had to cut it back a bit to get the numbers to work. So there'll be more at some point. The other part of this is a orchestra pit net, to put a safety net over the orchestra pit, because there was a younger student who fell into the pit on an outside group that was performing. So that there's an additional $8,000 on page 16 to get an estimate for the orchestra pit net. We did ask about, do other schools have this, because it's not something I've ever seen before, and I believe there was one local school that does have this net, which of course can be removed. It hooks in and you can remove it out as needed. So that total warrant article was for $50,000, and again, the school, both committees approved it 500. Obviously, this is not something that is, I don't know that this would be one that you put on the high priority list, but it's up to the school department to figure that out. And I don't know, Bob, if you have anything to say on that one.
No, not really. I'm all set. If there's questions, I'll gladly answer them.
Okay, I guess we can move on. Article 2105, this is another expensive, large article, $100,000. This is for the middle school and Marshall Simons. Those 2 schools, were rebuilt or renovated about 8 or 9 years ago now. And one of the things that's in those classrooms is these special microphones that the teachers have, so they don't have to yell. It also helps students who are hearing impaired. But the system is outdated and they're having trouble getting accessories. So this is to, and also some high school classes, I think you said, Bob. This is to replace that system with an updated one because they're having difficulty getting replacement parts. Again, it probably is not one that you would put super high on your list of priorities, because I guess we could go another year. And the quote came down at 112,000, but instead on the second page of that, page 20 at the very top, he had 60 components of one item that would have to get dropped to 50 in order to get down to the 100,000. So that's how the numbers work. It comes down to almost $97,000. And again, it was approved by both committees. And Bob, you probably can explain that a little bit better than I did.
Yeah, I mean, Susan, the only thing that I would really beg to differ with you on is that, you know, the value of how important these sound systems are. I think these have become a staple in the classrooms, and they may not have been that valuable for when I was in school or some other people were in school years ago. But I think nowadays, not only do the teachers get a benefit from it, but obviously the students do as well too. You get full immersion in the classroom where the students can hear no matter where they're sitting, or even if somebody around you is goofing, then you can still hear those systems. Plus, it helps less strain on the teacher's voice. But also, we have a lot of kids, I shouldn't say a lot, but we do have hearing impaired students as well, too, that benefit from these. So that being said, like I said, I think it's a judgment call on, you know, who would deem these to be valuable. But again, middle school was built, you know, in 2012. And Memorial is the second school, which was built in 2011, which is not old by any means, but again, they are 9 and 8 years old. So these systems, electronics, being 9 years old, trying to find replacement parts for them, microphones, things like that, or even when an amplifier dies, again, trying to replace just the amplifier alone is multiple dollars, where these new systems are getting so much cheaper, where we can actually replace more by moving to new systems. And we'll get a longer lifespan out of them than trying to replace them one-on-one when they fail.
Okay, and any questions from anyone else?
Question through the chairman.
Go, Frank.
Does this have any utilization for public announcements, a building-wide announcement of any kind?
Not sure I understand your question, Frank, but the school itself does have a announcement system in there.
But is that separate from this?
So if the principal or main office wanted to make an announcement, it would not go through these speakers. Now, this would be individualized to the classroom. So whatever content is in that classroom would just be for that classroom.
Right, okay. What I'm thinking about is, you know, safety in the building, but this is really an instructional issue.
So we could obviously have that in a different conversation, but we do have multiple systems in our buildings for relaying safety messages,
Okay.
stroke alarm, safety concerns, things like that.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess move on. 2106, this is the middle school auditorium, both sound and safety equipment upgrades. It's all $350,000. A lot of different components to this one. You'll notice it's multiple pages long with all the pieces, but it's basically the curtain and the rigging that's over the stage. It's lighting, it's sound system, a lot of pieces to all this. The curtains, I just want to point out, Bob had a company come in because the curtains have at least the one they tested had asbestos in it. So not only do we have to obviously replace the curtain, but there's going to be some asbestos remediation. There's actually 2 curtains. The estimate that you see on page 32, which is like the last page of this little section, gives you the remediation for one of the curtains. The other curtain hasn't been tested yet, but it's probably the same vintage, so that makes you assume that there's going to be two asbestos curtains that need to be taken care of. I know we've had town meeting once at the middle school, and we all found the sound system was challenging. I remember several years ago that happened because of a snowstorm, and the lights are currently touching the curtain and could cause a fire. So there's definitely a safety issue with some of these lights. And I'm going to let Bob talk more because there's a lot of technical stuff in here that's sort of over out of my area of expertise.
Again, Diane, Susan, thanks. So, yeah, so most of the equipment is pretty much vintage to the existing building. The building is, 50 plus years old. There have been some minor upgrades over time, mostly light bulbs or some surface mount speakers and things like that. But again, as far as rigging goes, original to the building, curtains original to the building, the placement of the lighting. I think anyone who's been in that auditorium knows how dark it is and how unsafe it is really to walk around, especially like up and down the aisles. The sound system itself, again, not conductive really to the system that's there. And, I think nobody likes to hear the word asbestos or at least talk about it. But the fire curtain for the time and for the error was installed as an asbestos curtain. Definitely not something that they would look to do now. But it's something that we want to remove. It's an 18 by 50 curtain. It's rather large, and it's on old rigging. So, well, that's the biggest safety concern there. The lighting and just general everything in the building was not updated as part of the renovation. So while we did renovate most of the other building, this auditorium was not touched as part of it. The only thing that was touched in the auditorium during the renovation was a lift on the stage. A handicap ADA accessible lift, but nothing else was updated there. So obviously, 9 years later, we're looking to continue those updates and utilize that auditorium a little bit more.
Okay, any questions from anyone? No? All right. Moving on to the Memorial Playground resurface. This is Article 2107. It's $50,000. Again, the Memorial, as we talked about, the Memorial School and Playground were renovated 9 years ago. There are pictures in your backup of some of the cracks and holes in the surface that is currently down. The current surface is a poured, and if we replace the same thing, a poured rubber surface, it would be $80,000. But there's an alternative, and it's currently in use at the preschool playground, and it has been found to be to work out very well. It's that cost is only $50,000. So there's a better warranty for this new play surface, and from 10 years versus 5, and it's $30,000 less expensive. So the school department thought the $50,000 option was going to work well, and that's what they thought they'd go with. Bob, anything else on that one?
No, I think you explained that one well. I mean, I do want to stress the fact that we originally introduced this as a $90,000 warrant article based on the given estimate to replace it exactly with the put-in-place rubber. But we do have great experience with the synthetic turf that we have at other playgrounds. So not only do we get a better warranty, as Susan mentioned, but we also get a reduced price. So you see the reduced cost down to $50,000 and a better warranty.
So both the committees approved that one 500 as well. Anything else on the playground? Okay. Moving on to 2108, the Marshall Simons exterior bathrooms. These are the, I believe, original bathrooms. They were not renovated when we did the whole middle school as well. So this is another piece of the school that wasn't touched before. This is $25,000 to do this. There are 2 handicapped accessible bathrooms that are right at the top of the hill. If your kids ever play Pop Warner, we always used to store the Snack Shack stuff up in those rooms. But they are handicapped accessible bathrooms, so they'd be useful when there's events out on the field. And the cost of that is $25,000, just retailing new fixtures and that kind of thing, and also a remote locking system, I believe is what I'm looking at here, so that you don't have to physically be there to lock them up at night or whenever the renting it is done with them on weekends and such. And again, both committees approved these 500. Anything else on that one, Bob?
No, I think you explained that one very well. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything? Okay. We're going Article 2109. It's $50,000. We have filtered water, and the original old bubblers have been replaced to these new filtered ones. But what we don't have in a lot of the units are a bottle. A lot of this have their own water bottles, but it's hard to fill a water bottle, a regular bubbler. We have 24 units that will need to be converted to bottle fill stations. This would give us 15 of them with the $50,000 amount. The electrical work can be done by by in-house electricians. So this is just the 15 units plus the plumbing that the $50,000 will cover, and that will leave just 9 bubblers without bottle fillers. So I believe every school would have at least some to help spread this out a little better. And that is all I have on that one. Anything else, Bob?
The only thing I want to add is that I think over the time since I've been in elementary school and middle school and so forth, I mean, we've just seen the delivery of how students, get water change. I never carried around a water bottle, but now we see, young children that are 4 years old carrying water bottles, adults carrying water bottles, and you see less use of the typical, water bubblers. So these fill stations may have been thought as unnecessary back in the day. But again, the water is filtered in our Burlington schools, so we're thankful for that. But these units will just provide a better delivery system for the staff and students to fill up their water bottles with, instead of putting their mouths or splashing water all over the bubblers that we typically use as younger children.
So those are the water bubblers. Let's do Article 20.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sue, on that one, or Roger? On these, probably, well, I don't care who answers it. Is it possible to fill a water bottle? I mean, we must be filling the water bottles today with the bubblers that are there. Am I correct? The filtered bubblers that are there?
So yes, that does happen, but each school has multiples already of these water fill stations. They're just not in ideal situations for everybody in the building. So that being said, that if you would tip over a water bottle, you may be able to fill it up, a percentage of it, a third or half away, before you would have to then obviously stop filling it up. But again, the newer systems would obviously just be able, like a vending machine at a 7-Eleven store, you'd be able to put your bottle right underneath it and fill up the water there.
Yeah, I understand the utility. I'm trying to get at the urgency on this one.
Yeah, I think the flow rate of a regular bubbler is kind of slow for filling a water bottle.
And yeah, the pressure behind it as well too doesn't really push it out 6 to 7 inches, and maybe pushing it out 1 or 2 inches, just enough to kind of get out there.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, these aren't just elementary schools, of course. This request right here is to spread it out amongst all 6 schools.
Yeah, I guess the school department will have to decide where to put that on the list of priorities.
Right.
I'm sure, obviously you can probably live another year without water bubblers. It's the little kids who probably make the biggest mess, right? 2110 is the security camera replacement and upgrades for $75,000. And I think I'm going to let Bob explain this one. There's a lot of technical stuff, but these are to improve our both the range and the quality, I guess, of the cameras. But it's really technical, so I'm going to let Bob explain this one.
So again, I think in a separate conversation, I would give more details. Publicly, I would say that these are all exterior cameras with a focus of Marshall Simons and Memorial, but there will be some cameras spread out amongst the other schools, and it is to improve exterior view of what we're able to see. So it's upgrading some existing cameras with newer wide angle or multi-lens cameras, or replacing or adding additional cameras, again, just for a wider view of our outside parking lots, buildings, and entrances and so forth. And again, I hate using this excuse multiple times, but the cameras at Marshall Simons and Memorial are 8-9 years old. They are probably our lowest quality and lowest wide angle coverage cameras that we have in the system throughout the town and the school. So again, replacing these and adding additional cameras to not only those schools and others will definitely help us for the coverage.
And these were approved by both committees, as all the others were. The amount is $75,000. You'll notice the total comes down to $81,000, and Bob indicated he would buy fewer of one type of camera. That is a pan view in order to get down to the 75,000. And any other questions on that one? Okay. 2111 is a curriculum one. It's for $90,000. The state has changed the curriculum at the middle school level for civics, geography, and world history. The backup on page 46 shows you 3 different vendors and quotes to provide textbooks or online digital content for this new subject matter. So the request is for $90,000, and there obviously needs to be more discussion about which program they go with, but those were the 3 quotes that they're considering. So that's a $90,000 request based on curriculum and the state curriculum changes. And we all did approve those 500. I don't know if this needs to be implemented next year. I don't exactly know the timeline on the changing curriculum, but this might be something we need to do sooner rather than later. I don't know, Bob, if you know more about that.
Again, I think this is going to be similar to the field conversation. I think you can only push it out for so long. The sooner we can get it in, the sooner we can transition out of our existing curriculum and get ramped up to this new curriculum and adopt it, across our 6th through 8th grade. If we were to delay it, it doesn't mean that we couldn't still teach our students and give great education. It just means that we're just going to be behind the 8 ball as far as the new curriculum and the new standards go, and then have a shorter time frame to catch up to those standards. So again, I think this would be a tough decision to push off, but it's definitely something that we have to consider for this year. I would strongly support it.
Yeah, probably more important than some of the other ones from a time point of view. Is it the last one? Almost. This is the last one. The last one is.
I had a question on that one.
Sure.
If I can ask a question, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to imagine this curriculum. What is being updated? Is it a particular class being added, or a different way of teaching math, or what is this?
From what I understand, I think they're trying to reintroduce civics in particular into the middle school level. Because I feel like how there's a core curriculum that the state issues, and the core curriculum by the state, they're trying to get them at the middle school level more of the civics, geography, and especially civics and geography, more of an emphasis. Maybe, I don't know, when we were young, we all, I think, got a lot more civics education than the more current students have, and I think they're trying to swing back to that a bit. Bob, I'm sure probably knows more than I do, though.
Again, I think you explained it pretty well. Obviously, the state sets the standards as far as what needs to be taught. Then, obviously, as districts and communities, we have to abide by that. That being said, yes, exactly. It's not math. It is geography. Again, drawing a mind blank right now, but it's geography, world history, and civics as well too. So again, probably something that I learned, in middle school and high school, and then the focus kind of shifted away from that a little bit with some of the newer curriculums. And then again, the new curriculum for 2020 and on now has a stronger focus again in grade 6, 7, and 8 on this civics, geography, and world history.
Okay, so it's a new focus on those, and presumably something else gets kind of deprecated or removed from the curriculum. But then this is the cost for the textbooks and so forth to implement that.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
Okay, that's on that one. The last one is $100,000 for design work. The information that for the backup are actually quotes for other projects, just to give you some idea of what these kind of projects cost. As you know, the school departments has tried many, many times to get the high school HVAC and science labs paid for by the school business authority, but they've been rejected like 8 times now. So it looks like we're going to have to do this in-house. They started the process with a request for qualifications to try to find a engineering design firm. And then from there, we'll have to figure out the actual project. And and Bob, I'm sure, can do a much better job of what this is, but this is trying to design something so that we can get going on this. And I'll let Bob give you better details.
Again, Susan, I'm going to keep complimenting you on the way you explain it. You're doing a great job on that, so thank you. It is true. So we did RFQ, which is request for qualifications for design and architect services. We were making a recommendation to school committee at our next meeting to contract and adopt one of those firms. Excuse me. Sorry. And then the intent with this funding is obviously to look at our buildings and assess those, right? And I just mean that last year for a warrant article, we asked for $100,000 to do some initial work on the boiler and HVAC system at the high school. We know that the high school is a 365,000 square foot building. So when we look at a boiler and HVAC system, it triggers a lot of other things: ceiling work, structural work, electrical work, and so forth. So while replacing the boilers themselves, we may be able to get the design work done relatively cheap. It's the other services that come along with that where this funds are looking to do. So this is what we're trying to take on, bringing on a contract with a new architect firm. We will need some funding in order to move forward with some of these processes. We don't believe that we will be able to delay the boiler and HVAC system at the high school for much longer. And given the size and complexity of the project, we know that it's going to be a long project to not only to design, but also to implement while we try to keep schools open as well too. So, again, this is a large number. I'm sure there's going to be a recommendation that someone says we delay this if we're, financially looking to save some money. But I think, again, given the 8 years that we've put into trying to get the high school through an MSBA project and that being unsuccessful, I still think that we need to put some focus into at least getting the design plans in place. So maybe not funding the full boiler replacement this year, which I'm not requesting, but at least getting the design plans in place with a relatively minimal dollar request. So when we are fully funded and through this pandemic, then we can actually look forward to requesting, a larger fund in order to do the actual work.
So both the committees approved that 500 as well. Any other questions on that one?
This is Frank. I want to just double check something. When I went to the link off of the web page, this pointed to the Francis Wyman first floor AC. This is obviously not that.
Yep. So in the explanation, Frank, below what I gave is estimates based on previous projects that we did during this fiscal year, just to kind of give an estimate what design fees would cost. Typically, it's about $200 per hour, depending on whether you have the principal or an architect or an engineering firm. But then the size of the project, you get some discounted rates by doing project-based as opposed to hourly rates.
So it's got nothing to do with Francis Wyman. That was just a way to gauge what this might cost to get a number on the warrant article?
Yep, it's stated in the article explanation that the examples below are for recent projects. So just examples.
Yep, all right, that's my mistake. I don't know why. Okay, so I just want to make a comment on this. The chances of us getting school building assistance now, since we've already not gotten it, I don't know how many years, I'd say has gone to negative numbers. So, I don't know. To me, this has got to be one of the highest priorities because we are really on borrowed time with getting these things going. Just a comment.
Thank you, Frank. I agree.
Yeah, especially that boiler. If that goes, no heat. Anything else on that one? Okay, and the very last article is one we see every year. This is the custodial costs for other outside groups to rent the facility. The school subcommittee didn't vote this one yet, and the reason why is because we were wondering about the citations and the mother-to-mother group. They both have 10 hours allocated, and Bob subsequently did tell us that they have not used any hours in the past year. So I don't know if the school committee meets again on Tuesday. So I don't know if they want to rejigger some of these numbers. It's not something that Ways and Means can adjust or anything. But if they move the numbers around, it's still not going to change the amount of $47,464.40 but the subcommittee hadn't voted on it yet because we were just curious about those two groups that we didn't think were active right now. But that is what this article is. We do this every year, as you all know, so that other outside groups can rent the building. And we have to just pay the janitor to just open it and close it, is what these amounts are for.
I do have a question with respect to this article, if I may.
Steve?
Did we use the allotment this year? And given that the schools are closed and not open to groups now, do we have any extra that's going to be returned back?
Bob, do you know at this stage?
So yes, there is I'm just trying to look it up because I want to make sure I give you the right number, but we have not spent all of that. So I don't want to say the wrong thing. It's a warrant article, so technically we are not looking to necessarily close it yet this year because there are other funds that will still be used. So we have to make sure that number is accurate. But right now we have not charged against those two activities. So yes, we would not be looking to spend that particular money. Some of I pretty much, again, I'm not trying to beat around the circle. I think right now we're probably close to being done, obviously, with the school. We just need to make sure that our billings are all up to date. All of our invoices are good. But I think the report that was, shared with you guys earlier today, I think that should be relatively accurate if that came from Nicole. So the remaining balance on that account right now, I'm just trying to make sure I have it in front of me. Community custodials.
Oh yeah, we just got that.
Yeah, I don't think I got a copy of that, so sorry.
No, I think the subcommittee just got it today.
Oh, the subcommittee got it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's not likely to be much, but yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious. If you don't have it off the top of your head, it's fine. But the answer is that there may be some left over in the warrant article.
Yeah.
Groups exceed their hours, so they end up, like many of these groups use more hours than what they get out of this article. Then they have to start paying.
Right.
I know every year that the scouts really benefit from it, so we really do appreciate it.
Yeah. So at any rate, we did not vote this article, but of course we would approve it. Bob, I don't see it on here.
It's about halfway down line number 20. It looks like about 15,000 remaining as of right now.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So again, that could be pretty accurate, but again, we have to make sure that all of our bills are up to date and we're good with as far as our allotment. But that's the number that's on the report, 15,000 remaining.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, oops, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sue.
No, that's it. That's exactly, we're done.
That's right.
So I have a general question on specifically all of these school warrants. So every one of these is fueled with free cash, and that's obviously the biggest pressure point on us is to preserve free cash where we can, and then to reduce offsets to lost revenues. So one of the ways you can do that is bond whatever you can, borrow. And borrowing, you can't do that with operating things, but you can do it with infrastructure. And we may be in a climate, which is somewhat a question for Paul, where borrowing is actually two things are going on. Cash is king, and borrowing is highly leveraged. So the only things that I see on here that could conceivably qualify for any kind of bond consideration would be the boiler in the varsity field, and they may be too small. But I wonder if anybody's asked that question and if that's a possibility to fund these items that way.
That's a good idea, Frank.
If it going down the list, you can't do it. Possibly some of this audio stuff, maybe, or maybe a bundle. And I know Eric's probably listening. Maybe a bundle can be put together that can become a bondable package, and then we might be in a slightly better position to float it. And it would do two things. Number one is it would spread the cost at a very low interest rate, but most importantly, you could get the project done and still hold on to the free cash. And cash is going to be king for the next 2 years for operating offsets. So just a thought, okay?
Yeah, Frank, I think the question I've always heard from Paul and John about that is that we're trying to keep room in the bond schedule for the really big things.
Yeah, and we'll be looking at that, Roger. But there's so much going on in the markets that it's hard to tell. It still may be very much in our favor to accelerate bonding rather than not, depending on what happens in these secondary markets. It's too big a topic, but that may be a way to bundle some of this and get it done actually to our favor.
Just a quick point of order, Roger. The Facebook seems to have stopped streaming live, so I don't know if you can report that to someone.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Frank again. I'm sorry. One other thought I had had lost it there. On the security camera stuff, Bobby, is there any chance we can get grants for any of this?
I'm sure there must be chances. Obviously, I'm not aware of every one. I know that we've looked at a couple.
Well, the one that pops out is the security camera replacement and upgrades. I wonder. And I also wonder if the design work for the high school could be bundled into something that could be part of a bond idea here as well. So these are just random thoughts for you to take away. We can't do anything with it here, but I wonder about the security camera. If we could get, if there are any grants out there, possibly support from the police department to get it.
All right. I guess, yeah, we're not going to do anything voting these tonight. And we'll have another chance as when they do come up for a vote to ask finalizing questions. So if there's nothing else,
Can I say something, Roger? This is Doug. So usually this is honestly one of my favorite meetings because I love the capital budget items. They're free cash. It's kind of already paid for, and they're usually kind of exciting, fun things that show that we're moving forward. And that's not, it doesn't feel the same right now. I can't help but wonder, if we had known what we know now when this budget started 3, 4, 5 months ago, would these still be the same items? Even if we have the same money and we come back and say, all right, we feel comfortable, we can spend 1.6 million for the schools. Are these still the same items that we need to be spending this money on, given the fact that it's, depending on who you listen to, it's possible that we have another period of time during flu season where we close the schools again. Are there other infrastructure things? Are there other technology things? Are there things that the teachers are going to come back and say, if we're going to do this distance thing again, we need X or Y? Then that makes things like the football field look a little silly at this point to spend the money. I'm all for safety, certainly a big football fan. Truly not confident we're even going to play football this fall. So I just think Frank talked about maybe they'd come back with some prioritization. I would also feel more comfortable if they just came back and said, still feel like this is the list. We'd spend our 1.6 million on. Secondly, I think that there's just some optics here. And I think we really have to pay attention. And I respect the town administration and that they're talking about holding back and we're going to see what happens. We could wait till September. I don't think we're going to know a whole lot more about what this entire next year is going to look like. Again, we may have another shutdown of businesses. Hopefully not, but it sounds possible. If we get a second wave, which is what some experts are predicting. They haven't been that accurate with some of their predictions, but I think we need to be prepared for that. And it just feels like we have a significant number of people in town that are unemployed right now, or they are worried about paying for bills. And it's going to be hard 2 weeks from now, a month from now, to vote for a $500,000 field. And I think that you can see that with a lot of things on the list that made total sense 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, and they don't make that much sense to me right now. So,
Roger.
Yeah, Phil.
Okay, Roger reminded me that any communications to the complete committee are required to be entered in the public record. So I did correct that with Amy and sent that memo over to her. But I do have another one that I'd like to enter into the public record so I can send you, and it's along the same lines as what Doug was just talking about. Can you see this? This is a list of the top 10 taxpayers in fiscal year 2020, excuse me.
So just a sec, how do you think we're going to see it? Did you share a document or?
I just shared it here, but how do you share it?
Down at the bottom of your screen, there are, if you click, you'll see a bunch of buttons. One of them has an up arrow on it.
Bear with me one moment.
You click the up arrow, it asks you which screen on your computer you want to share.
Oh, great. Great. I think this is it. You see it?
That looks like the document I saw earlier, yes.
Okay, this is the top 10 taxpayers in the town of Burlington. And as you can see, most of them are shut down. So my primary concern here is over the next 6 months to a year, we're already receiving inquiries about abatements. And I'm not sure, but I'm thinking we're going to be inundated with abatement requests in this fiscal year coming up. Certainly, depending on how long this thing continues, excuse me, I don't think it would be out of the ordinary to see that we might get requests of 10 or 15% off of these values and subsequently off of the revenue. And as you know, if we lose levy on the commercial properties, that's going to be transferred to the residential properties. So, that looks like, I think in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, we had an 8 or 9% residential tax increase because of the decline in commercial property values. So anyway, I just wanted to end this thing and then send it to you guys in a memo so you get an idea of where the money's coming from the top 10.
So Phil, what's the total? I just can't read it. It's too small.
It's 1.1 billion is the total in value for the top 10, and it's
the tax dollars. The tax dollars.
No, that's in value. 1.1 billion in value and 28,269,000 in total revenue.
Tax. So if it call it 30 million and you lost a third of it, you're losing 10 million bucks, right?
Well, yeah, a third would be, well, it depends on how long this goes. It's conceivable. I'm thinking we're going to lose 15%, but if this thing continues to go, and don't forget, we all know nobody's going to ramp up right away.
I'm just trying to get scale on this. That's all. That's because that's what the administration's going to have to do that and come back to us with a projection, and it's going to be based on guesstimates of shortfalls in the scale of it. And we don't know what the Fed offset will be, if any, so.
That's what I'm saying. I think that this is going to be the major consideration along with the other revenue producers coming up in the next year. Because they're not all going to ramp up and be fully occupied in that period of time. So anyway, I'll send it along to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, thank you to the school committee subcommittee. I know just how much work they've put in.
Thanks.
I'll second that. The school budget is big and complex, and I appreciate the efforts of the school subcommittee. So up on the top of your window, there's a stop share button.
What does it look like?
Right up to the top of your window, and a little bar of buttons comes down, and stop share is on the left.
Stop share is on the left. Oh,
This is
impressive.
impressive.
Can I do that? I'll just close it out.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. You had a question?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mike. I hear Frank having a hard time seeing this stuff. Just a quick tip for you, Frank. Do you have a menu at the top of your screen that says WebEx meetings?
Yeah.
So under view.
Oh, okay.
For showing documents, you can click full screen.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay,
That'll
thank
make
you.
it bigger. And then on the left-hand side, there'll be some little controls. There'll be a plus and a minus, and you can expand it even.
Enlarge and, yep, okay.
You can get it so you can see it.
All righty, thank you.
Sure thing, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Okay. The only other thing on the agenda was it seems like ancient history now, the minutes from March 11th. I sent them around. I think they've been around a couple of my versions. Can I have a motion to approve?
Moved.
Second.
Okay. Back to the roll call. Bond?
Yes.
Diane Creedon?
Abstain.
Pete Davidson?
Yes.
David Tate's not here. Frank Monaco?
Abstain.
Thank you. Cherie?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
Noah Gallagher?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Tony Rollins?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Susan Harrigan?
Yes.
Thank you. Like 11:02. I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with the roll call votes. It's a bit tedious, but cost of doing business this way. So I had not planned a meeting for next week. But I guess I want to ask. We sent around the list of all the warrant articles for people to review and with the departments. How many people will be ready to present some or all of them next week? Or should we put it off till beginning of May or May 13th, 6th or 13th of May?
The police and fire should be ready.
Yeah, this is Frank. Town Hall 1. I don't think David's on, right?
No, he had.
We haven't even spoken. We could be if we had to be, because I think they're actually going to be fairly easy, but be better if we went another week.
Okay. If nobody's itching to do it next week, we'll not have a meeting next week and meet again May 6th. And I understand, right, we should have the school budget ready for May 6th. Is that right, Susan?
Yeah, the school committee's voting on the 28th, and then we should be all set for the 6th.
Okay. All right, if that's acceptable. Yeah, Frank?
This is Frank. Yeah, sorry, Roger. So one thing maybe somehow we need to find out here, but the omnibus article is one of the things on the warrant, but I have no idea. we may not be able to process that one because we just don't have enough information about where shortfalls are.
Right. I mean, until
So that
Comes up
may
with the
that may
omnibus.
just have to get left over. In other words, we could do town hall 1. I think that's going to get left over. We already know we're going to do nothing with stabilization and OPEB. So yeah, I'm looking real fast at this thing. Some of these are going to be hard, and we're just going to have to say we still don't know.
Mhm. Understood. Yeah. All right. I have nothing further for tonight. We appreciate everybody's forbearance and sticking all these topics.
I just have a Facebook update. There were about 350 views and the video feed was restored a few minutes after I reported it, so that was good. But there were no comments.
There must be nothing on Netflix tonight.
Oh, we've watched it all.
We've watched it all.
Yeah. Every morning I say to Chris, well, welcome to another day of lockup.
All right. That's all I got, folks.
Thanks, Roger. Good night. Oh, do we need a motion to adjourn? We're adjourned.
Adjourn.
Good night, Frank.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.